Certainly, the conflict in the Middle East has diverted attention from the war in Ukraine, but that war goes on. Just today, Russia destroyed I guess it was a Liberian flagged ship in the port of Odessa, killing the pilot. It's been attacking Ukrainian infrastructure. The Ukrainians are fighting valiantly back, but the war seems to be at this moment in a dynamic stalemate. And the Ukrainians, continue to need assistance from the West, particularly from the United States. And of course, that's up for question at the moment.
It is up for question, but so far the United States has pledged and given quite a bit of aid to the Ukrainians. Are you concerned? I mean, I guess if you were a decision maker in Washington, what would you need to see in order for you to say, okay, that's enough aid for Ukraine?
Well, I think we have to continue supporting them. If we don't send them more assistance and more weapons, it's going to be much harder for them to push back against the Russians. I think there'll be probably somewhat of a lull in the fighting in the winter, even though some of these attacks will go on. But we know that in the spring, the fighting will start up again, and we need to equip the Ukrainians so that they can continue to try and push back the Russians.
But if it's a stalemate, then what's the motivation for, and forgive me because we're talking about, we have to remember this is
people.
This is people, yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of that gets lost, I think, in the conversation when members of Congress are talking about budgets, and there's a lot of tension with providing aid to Ukraine, and there has been for more than 2 years at this point. How do lawmakers justify continuing to send aid if it's just a continued stalemate?
Well, first of all, it's in our national interest not to have Russia win this war. If Russia succeeds in subduing Ukraine, if that's not where Russia's going to stop, it'll probably set its sights further west, including possibly, if you read some of the things that were published today, written by the former President Medvedev, it cites on Poland. And the U.S. doesn't, we don't have any boots on the ground there. Our men and women aren't dying for this, but it's in our interest to make sure that we don't get sucked into another even bigger war in Europe if we don't support Ukraine, as it fights back.
Well, and this is where, we so wanted to have you back because it was understandably, you understand why in the past month we have shifted our focus. It feels like as a world, how much stress can we geopolitically focus on? Both situations are dire and important, but we have shifted to what's going on between Israel and Hamas at this point. But I wanted you to come back on for us to understand Vladimir Putin and what his goals are here with what he is trying to do. It doesn't necessarily stop with Ukraine, correct?
That's correct. I mean, he's first of all believes that he can wait this out. The war will go on in 2024. Russia has more men that it can send as cannon fodder than Ukraine does. It has 3 times the population, and they're getting, ammunition now from North Korea. We know that they're getting drones from Iran. So he wants to wait this out and hope that someone enters the White House in 2025 who will say, enough, we don't want to support Ukraine anymore, or that there'll be Ukraine fatigue maybe in some European countries. So he's waiting for Western resolve to collapse, which it remarkably hasn't yet. But his goals don't stop at Ukraine. There might be a pause. He wouldn't, Russia wouldn't immediately then turn its sights on another country. But in the longer run, as long as he's in power, and he's running for re-election next year, and he will surely get re-elected, as long as he's in power, those aims, I think, aren't going to change.
So he has enough men. Does he have enough money? I mean, can he break his country, Vladimir Putin, in his fight, his conquest of Ukraine?
He has enough money. I mean, the Russians are still making money on selling oil and gas, despite all of the sanctions and everything. They are making money from the hydrocarbon sales. Their economy is set to grow, predicted to grow. In fact, I think by about 2% next year. They've recovered a bit, and the economy is doing better than it was before. So they can continue this fight.
That's what's so surprising to me. I mean, we spoke to you, Angela, early on and we've been speaking to you throughout the conflict. But the general consensus was this was going to be quick, and it's been anything but quick. How do you think this war ends as we approach the 3rd year?
Right. Well, it's, this is the $64,000 question that everyone is asking. I mean, at some point, it might be that both sides recognize that neither of them are going to achieve their full aims and that they do sit down and negotiate. That's still what we want to avoid, is another frozen conflict, which is to have some kind of agreement, but which is really only temporary, and an agreement that would involve Ukraine, unless it makes more progress territorially, it would lose some more territory. That might end the fighting. You could have a ceasefire, you could end the fighting,
right.
But that's not a longer term solution to this. The desired solution would be obviously for Russia to withdraw its troops and to renounce territorial claims on these areas that it claims to have annexed, but which it doesn't fully control.
Right.
But that may take much longer. So it probably would be, in the short run at least, some kind of a ceasefire and a temporary solution to this. A longer term solution is much harder to envisage.